Hi, welcome to Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education starting with a business meeting and then moving into a work session. Today is November 6th, and I will also add that we are meeting at Hillside. I'm also going to say our computers were down today, so if anybody was trying to access our agenda, you probably couldn't. So thank you, Janine Janauer, our district clerk. She has printouts of the agenda and of the attachments as well, which are on that table if anybody needs to look at them. And with that, I think I turn it over to you.
Thank you. And yeah, just to piggyback on what Lisa just shared, we were without a server, and our internet was down within the district today, which meant we had no email. My understanding is it just came back within the last hour or so. So to our families in the audience, if you've emailed, sorry. And maybe give everyone a pass, like a day or so, to get caught up. But it does seem to be back up and running. It was an issue with Verizon. One of our fiber optic wires was cut. Not cut like on purpose, I don't think. No. So I didn't do that. No. So we are up and running, which is great. So just a couple of important things coming up so that everyone is aware. A blast email did go out about a week and a half ago, informing our parents about a change in the calendar, so that will just go on record so everyone knows. December 4th, which is a Monday, our schools are going to be closed for a day of professional development for our staff. So school will be closed for our kids. It's going to be a superintendent's conference day that we are adding to the calendar that we have the flexibility of doing based on New York State mandates. Additionally, the other piece of information that came out in that blast was that on Friday, December 22nd, which is the day before the winter break, holiday break, dismissal is going to be at approximately 1:15, and that is so that we can have a more robust day of instruction as opposed to 2 half days, which were originally on the calendar. So just an FYI, so that's out there. As per the rest of this week, we have some parent-teacher conferences are continuing. They started last week. Additionally, we have our junior formal this Thursday at the Cochran Gym, which is exciting. So our juniors, I'm sure, are going to be riveted, right, Parker? I'm sure the juniors cannot wait. We also have no school on Friday. We are observing Veterans Day this coming Friday, so no school for anyone. And then next week we have some great events coming up, like our National Honor Society inductions. We also have a math night at the middle school on November 15th. It's not listed there, but I do believe that is happening as well for our families who are interested in that. And finally, we have the high school play is happening. It is As You Like It at the auditorium. That is next Friday and Saturday. So come on down. Please jump in.
May I add about Veterans Day?
Yes.
Yes. We also, last year, the PTSA piloted for the first time in a long time a celebration of our veterans in school, and it was just absolutely wonderful, soup to nuts. At Hillside, our veterans were honored with a beautiful assembly coordinated by Amy and her staff, and that's going to happen again this year at 9 o'clock. The entire school gathers, and our veterans are on stage, and they are honored with song and with writing and with gift bags, and just some of our veterans speak, and it is just an incredibly moving event. And I think we all walked away with a tremendous appreciation for those who helped to protect our country. What the veterans then do when they leave Hillside is then they are escorted to the Farragut complex, where they meet with our history and social studies classes in the middle school and in the high school, and they share their experiences. And the ages range from people who have just finished serving their first terms, their first tours, to several people who served in World War II. And they really make history come alive, and also deepen our students and all of our appreciations for the amazing work that they do. And as I always teach my own children, if these people didn't do what they did, then we couldn't do what we do. So our deepest appreciation to them, and we are thrilled. Oh, and one more thing, this year the celebration is being sponsored not just by the PTSA, but by SEPTA as well.
Great, thank you.
We look forward to that. That's on Thursday.
That's Thursday at 9 a.m. here at Hillside, and then moving down. Additionally, because our next board meeting is not until Monday, November 27th, we do have a half day before Thanksgiving, and that dismissal time will be 11:45. Yes? Okay. And then we obviously have off for Thanksgiving and the day after, so just be aware of that. And on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving is also another tradition, I think, that speaks to how much we value community here. It's the Senior Friends Day at the middle school, and so the middle school coordinates events where senior members of our community who are connected to our kids have the opportunity to come in and spend some time in our schools. So really excited about experiencing those for the first time myself. So that is some of the stuff happening coming up. we are going to turn it over to Parker for a moment. She's going to give us a quick update about some stuff happening at the high school. And then we have some amazing students here from Hillside who are going to give us an update on things that are happening here. So excited about today. So, Parker.
So we do have the juniors have their...
Oh, my goodness.
Tony touched on a bunch of the things I was going to talk about, which are the junior formal and the plays coming up, but also something to mention before our next board meeting is we have our annual Project Share Thanksgiving dinner.
That's great.
So we're going to be busing in homeless and preparing the previous week and then serving a full dinner. So that's a lot of fun, and everyone is welcome to volunteer.
All right, thank you. And that's a Tuesday, right before?
Yeah, Tuesday.
The 21st.
Yeah, the 21st, and then there's going to be prep that's open to everybody. We're going to be preparing all the food the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday beforehand.
And Parker, the prep is at the high school cafeteria?
It's at the high school
right?
cafeteria, yeah.
Great.
What's the best way to get information? The Facebook page?
There is a Project Share Facebook page with all the information, and then also I know it's in the high school office, there are slips with all the information on it as well.
Great, thank you. All right, so that's what's going on at our high school. Thank you very much, Parker. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amy Kazis, our elementary principal here at Hillside, who is going to introduce our amazing student council representatives who are going to give us our update here at Hillside.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Katie Magnata, who is our student council advisor, and under her direction we have 4 amazing Hillside students who are here to share with you some of the things that they love about Hillside. So first I'd like to call up Sylvie Black.
Hi, I'm Sylvie Black, and I'm in 4th grade. What I love most about Hillside is that the classroom is like a family because we can all rely on each other, and like if somebody's having a tough time with reading or writing, you can just tap on somebody's shoulder who's sitting next to you, and they're always welcome to help. And the teachers, they're just like always teaching you the best way that they can, and it's really fun. Like my teacher, Mrs. Vaccaro, she will like make the math into like a fun warm-up. Like she'll like do the backgrounds fun, and she makes it like a fun way, and she makes her class funny, and it's a wonderful place to be.
And when I asked you how 4th grade was going, what word did you use to describe it? You remember?
Amazing.
You said it was amazing, yeah, which is pretty amazing. So thank you, Sylvie. Nice to know.
And now I'd like to introduce Tavia Seitz.
I'm Tavia Seitz, and I'm in 4th grade, and I'm going to talk to you about reading, because I love it at Hillside here. And this is my book baggie, which is new to Hillside this year. You can keep in it all of the books that you're currently reading and your partner book. With your partner book, you can write about your partner book. You can write in your reading notebook about your partner book. And there are 3 ways you can write about it. The first way is character drawing. You draw your main character and your secondary character and describe them. The second way is details from the text in my thinking page. You write a detail from the text and what you were thinking about it. For example, I wrote, here's your frindle as a detail from the text, and I was thinking, what is a frindle and why did Nick not say pen? The last way is writing about your thinking, where you can write about what you're thinking about the book. There are many ways you can do this, but one of them, my favorite way that you can do it, is writing about what you learned from this character's experiences. And this is my favorite way because you can really think deeply about what who your character is. And thank you.
Thank you, Talia.
Thank you, Talia.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce Jacob Charney.
All right. Come on, Jacob. Jacob gets extra points because he's wearing a Mets jersey. And it's also a really special day for Jacob because it is his 10th birthday. So, happy birthday, Jacob. We're on it. Double digits, Jacob. Make it happen.
I'm Jacob Charney, and I'm in 4th grade. I think STEAM is a privilege for everyone at Hillside. I think hands-on learning makes learning fun, and you also learn something from it. An example of that is, so at STEAM, we took 4 bottles, we cut the side open, and then we filled each bottle with an equal amount of soil, and then we put different things in the soil. So in one bottle, we didn't put anything in the soil. In one, we put pebbles. In one, we put wood chips. And in one, we put a plant. And then we put an equal, so we put a cup where the cap would be. So then we put an equal amount of water in each of the bottles. And we saw which let out the most soil and water. The pebbles let out the most soil and water because pebbles don't absorb water, and everything else does. So.
Awesome. Nicely done.
Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to welcome Colin Sexton.
Hi, my name is Colin Sexton from the Spino and Miss Forbes 4th grade class. One of the things I like most about Hillside is math. I like math because there are a lot of different strategies you could use, and also the teachers are very helpful and organized when they're teaching it. 4 of the strategies are standard algorithm, partial products, an area model, and distributive property. And I liked standard algorithm because I thought it was the easiest and quickest for me. And yeah.
That's good. All right, nicely done.
These are 4 of our very many wonderful students we have here at Hillside, and I'd like to just give them one more round of applause for coming out tonight.
I just have to say, Sylvie, Tavia, Jacob, and Colin, you guys are amazing. You know, when we adults have to speak in front of people, we get really nervous. We've got our notes right in front of us. We don't know what to do. And the 4 of you, boy, it's not even just what you're talking about, and your passion is so wonderful, but to see how comfortable you are in a room full of grown-ups, and we can be kind of scary grown-ups sometimes, you know? And you just seem so at home in front of the microphone. I can't wait to hear what you guys do in the future. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us.
Yeah, I second everything that Lisa just said. It was really impressive to hear you all talk, and a special thank you to Katie Magnotta for working with them as the student council staff advisor. So thank you for making this happen, Katie, and just to hear all of your thoughts and insights. But you kind of took us on a little journey of what your experiences are here, right? From the whole idea of family to what you're doing in literacy to what you're doing in science and STEAM and math. It was a really wonderful thing. So thank you all. And Jacob, if it's okay with you, on the count of 3, can we all just say happy birthday? I don't know that you want to hear us sing, but we could just, is that cool? Can everyone, all right, ready? So on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday! All right. Listen. And now you can go party. So you are free to go. Thank you very much.
Jacob has cupcakes to celebrate.
Yeah.
So Jacob, you can share those with your friends.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Kazis. Yeah. Or the board. Don't worry, Tim. We'll celebrate your birthday too. We'll bring you cupcakes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, moms and dads, for bringing your kids down this evening to help us out. Thank you so much.
So
we're going to move public comment.
I was going to say, should we just give it a minute to quiet down, though, and then we'll move into public comment? So why don't we just take a minute so that we don't have the noise going on? And if anybody needs to go get a cupcake,
Yes.
you know where to go.
It's a working session. I don't
Tim,
know.
you may want to go now while they're.
But like, sort of done your part. You're free,
I think you can still take the
unless you
10-year-old.
go
I think first we need to know what flavor they are.
Sure.
It may, it may.
Understand that if you
If
say,
they're lemon, I don't care.
Out, I got stuff to do. It's a Monday night.
I'm with you on that. I want that one. All right, thank you, Amy.
Okay.
Thank you for, and thank you to John as well. And we have a bunch of our staff here, and thank you for coming out to support our kids as well. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, now, next is public comment. If anybody wants to speak, the podium is right there. Do we have anybody here to make a public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, no public comment. Next are our business items. Is there anything that needs to be talked about here?
Particularly, no, but most of the stuff you'll see there is related to various services that are provided either in district or out of the district. And there's nothing really, nothing new or different than anything that's been done in the past, and including the lice lady.
In the budget calendar.
Oh, and sorry, the budget.
Right, sent out before.
Yes, okay.
And that's here.
Okay, so is everybody okay proceeding with a consent agenda for all the items under business, the business items, as well as the placement for CSE and CPSE? Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. And then we have our personnel appointments.
And those are relatively uneventful, nothing really pressing, but this, we had a sub that we can get on there, which is great, and we did have to not assign, but different teachers are picking up for a leave as well, so we just wanted to make sure that was approved tonight so we can get started with those.
Okay, so we'll take that as a consent agenda unless anybody doesn't want to. May I have a motion to approve the personnel items under item 5?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. And last before our work session is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting from November 6th. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so with that, we are now going to move into our work session. And if you're going to ask the difference between a business session and a work session, there's not really a whole lot of difference. The idea is that a work session can be a little more informal. And we have been, discussing, do we televise these, do we not? This one, though, I started to think this past weekend that because it is a pretty important presentation that parents who can't be here may want to see, that we're going to televise this presentation because I think it will get a lot of viewership. So with that, I think, am I turning it over to you at this point, Amy?
I can frame it, if that's
sure,
okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And we can turn it over to Amy. I don't know if you want to join us, and come on. I just asked Amy and John to kind of sit closer so that they can be with us and part of the discussion. Feel free to move the table or do whatever is comfortable there. So one of the things, so everyone who's in the audience is aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it and the structure in which we're doing it. One of the things that we had discussed as a board and myself early on when I started here was the idea of getting our schools and the different activities that are happening in our schools to be part of our board meetings, right? So we had talked specifically about having each school visit us at a board meeting twice during the year, somewhere near the beginning of the year, so they could spotlight a specific thing going on. For example, a couple of months ago, we had Mr. ADPHO from the high school come down with Nora, whose last name I cannot remember now. She is our Bertacci. Okay, Bertacci, sorry, to talk about the biliteracy seal, and so they walked us through that and talked a little bit about that, and they're going to come back later in the year and tell us how that went. We're going to have, next up is our elementary school, and they're going to speak with us a little bit about what the work is that they've been focused on here around literacy, particularly balanced literacy. And then I believe it's next month, the middle school will be coming, and they will be talking to us as well about, I believe, their Courageous Conversation courses and the work that they've done in that area. Each school will then come back in the sort of early spring, late winter, to kind of give us an update on how things are going. So this is sort of round 2. This is the first time, though, we're trying it as a work session. When we did the biliteracy seal, it was a regular business meeting. They just kind of presented. This will follow more of the format of a discussion that will really be driven by Amy and John based on what they're sharing, but then, questions that come up from our end for the purposes of discussion. And so Amy, John, and I did have an opportunity to speak before tonight and kind of get a sense of what's the information that might be relevant. So if it's not relevant to you, I apologize, because I I made suggestions. So hopefully hopefully what you hear is relevant to you. But certainly, more importantly, long term is, as we wrap up, what are the things that you'd like to hear about, to our board members? What would you like to hear about the next time they come back? What data do you want to know about, or what anecdotal notes do you want to have, be shared? So it is an ongoing conversation. So thank you to Amy and John for being here tonight. So if you don't mind, maybe give us a little bit of an understanding of what's going on around balanced literacy and our work specifically with Gravity Goldberg and Patty McGee, is that Patty's name, who are literacy consultants this year and worked with us last year as well. So.
Yes. So good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us here to talk to you about the ELA work that has started this year at Hillside. When I first arrived last year, the first thing that I did was put out a survey to our staff. And the survey gave me a lot of feedback from our staff members. And some of the highlights that were repeated in the survey multiple times included consistency in an ELA program, the need for both vertical and horizontal alignment in curriculum, teacher input in curriculum decisions, and a need for professional development for the staff. So those 4 pieces were really important to our staff members. In addition to those 4 pieces, the other things that I heard from the community included the need for teacher autonomy, that we want our teachers to continue to be able to be individuals in their classrooms, the need for student choice. There's been a lot of work in this district around LADI and a lot of work around student choice and student voice, and we wanted to continue to honor that. The need for diversity in what our children are reading, so that children are seeing themselves in books and learning about others in books as well. And then finally, the need for differentiation of curriculum, so that our reading is based on what is best for all children, not just some children, so that all kids are being met where they are, and then work is being done to move each child forward on their own continuum. So in hearing all of the needs from our staff, from our community, and seeing the instruction in action, I have a literacy background, and what I recognized is that just bringing in another program wouldn't be the right way to go in Hastings, because we really needed to be able to honor where our teachers are, honor where our students are, and bring in the love that I know that the community was looking for. For that reason, we spent a lot of time, the teachers and I, really thinking around what would work best for Hillside, and ultimately what we decided is that we needed to bring balanced literacy to Hillside. So what we've done is we've brought in a balanced literacy model. It is not a program. It doesn't drop in with a curriculum. Instead, our teachers were a part of the curriculum writing, guided by our consultant team of Gravity Goldberg and Patty McGee. Gravity and Patty are very, very well-educated consultants who know the work of curriculum writing. They know balanced literacy, and they know it deeply. And their guidance has been instrumental in helping us really build a curriculum here. So our teachers worked with our consultants this summer in developing curriculum for K-4. In the curriculum are goals, and then underneath the goals are units. So our goals for each grade level are very specific. So for example, Unit 1, and I pulled it up on my computer now that I can. So our goals for Unit 1 for kindergarten, the unit is entitled We Are Readers. And the goals are realistic goals. Readers choose books that look interesting. Readers handle books carefully. Readers share books with a partner. Readers follow predictable routines in a workshop. So these are very focused goals. The work is around teaching students not only the what, but also the how. And that is what we have been doing with our teachers as well. So our plan is a 5-year plan to roll out balanced literacy, because we're very cognizant of the fact that our teachers are learning while they're teaching. And we don't want it to be an overwhelming process, and then as a result, it gets too overwhelming. So what we've done is we've laid out a very clear plan for instruction. The first year is focused on the Reader's Workshop. Teachers are learning about what are the components of Reader's Workshop, what does a mini lesson look like, how does conferring work, and what does a share look like. And very interesting that as we walk into classrooms, we're seeing Reader's Workshop in action. We're seeing students in books. What you saw with Tavia tonight was authentic. She's got a book baggie. She's got a reader's notebook. She's got not only the book that she's reading, but on-deck books, books that will be coming up next for her to read. And this is in all of our classrooms, K through 4. So students in kindergarten, though they may not be readers yet, they have heart books in their baggies, books that mean something to them, books that are special, and that they can tell stories very often just from the pictures. So the rollout of our balanced literacy is to really focus on Reader's Workshop and the reading components for the first 2 years. So year 1, focusing around the Reader's Workshop. Year 2, adding in the interactive read aloud, the shared read, and assessments. And then year 3, moving into Writer's Workshop and doing the exact same thing with the rollout. So the summer before Writer's Workshop, teachers working with the consultants in creating the curriculum, and then rolling it out where the first year, year 3, would be wrapped around the writing workshop, and then year 4, the components of shared writing and assessment as well. And then finally in year 5, really looking at those important pieces of word work and vocabulary and grammar. So our rollout plan is purposefully slow, but very methodical, so that our teachers are gaining experience and comfort in each component as they move along. The professional learning is the critical.
Do you want to ask questions? Oh, wait, hold on.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, jump in.
So you have a 5-year plan.
Yes.
And as new teachers come into the building, how do they catch up with your plan? Is it something that they're seeing, this approach they're seeing in their current teacher development programs where they're just graduating, whatever, they're in their early experience? Or how are they catching up? Say if somebody comes in year 3 and we're into writing, how do they get caught up?
Right, great question. So a few different ways. One way is our teams work very collaboratively together. So that's an absolute gift, and that was in place when I arrived here. For that reason, there's a lot of support from the grade level teams, and each team has a leader. So that person would be instrumental in helping to support the new teacher as they move in. Additionally, we have our consultants that are scheduled. They have coaching sessions. So a lot of that time is based on what a teacher needs. Many of our teachers that are coming in are already skilled in balanced literacy. This is not a program. This is a model, and it's a model that's really taught into in teacher prep programs. But that being said, there's always tweaks, and there's new curriculum, and the curriculum here would be different potentially than the curriculum they might have used somewhere else. So through the office hours and coaching time with the consultants, any teacher will be able to get the individualized support that they need. In the same way that we know that students learn best from having the opportunity to try it on their own and then have feedback, we're trying to do that same model with teachers. So first, we set it up with the learning about, the I do, watch me, I'm going to tell you the information, watch me as I show you, and then the we do, where it's the gradual release. So now it's the teacher and the students doing it together in the same way. It's the consultant and the teachers doing it together. And then it's the you do. Students off, give it a shot, and I'm here by your side to help you and to conference with you. And in the same way for the teachers, that same model.
Amy, can you just sort of define balanced literacy? What is that terminology mean exactly?
Yes. So balanced literacy is actually a combination of a lot of different models that have happened over the years. So years ago, when many of us went to school, we really learned with the phonics approach. And the phonics approach is where you're looking at a word and you're looking at the word parts. And because you understand word parts, you can put words together. And by putting words together, you learn to read. And that's how many of us learned to read many years ago. And then there was a big shift, as you know, to whole language. And whole language was the focus on Well, just reading words and word parts is not about the love and the joy, and we're missing that. So by moving to whole language, the teaching was focused on reading books, reading real, authentic text, not the kind of readers that we may have grown up on that weren't as authentic. So with whole language, we moved away from phonics and we moved to reading text and diving right in. But the thing is, we were missing the phonics approach, so very often students didn't have word attack skills. Spelling actually was an area that we saw a lot of challenge in because kids didn't have that background. So finally, there was this balanced literacy, where it was, well, why do we have to choose one? Can we actually have a balance and choose both? So that's what balanced literacy is. It's taking the whole language joy and love and real authentic books, and it's balancing it with, we can't leave out word work, we can't leave out vocabulary, we still have to pay attention to those pieces and put them all together.
And if I can just add to what Amy said, the other piece of that is also the instructional model that accompanies the approach, because there are programs that package themselves as a balanced literacy program, and it's like a reader and Basil or whatever you might call it. And what is unique about our approach, which I think is, which I know is a research-based approach, is that it's rooted in the workshop model, in which Amy described, like I do, we do, you do, right? And that really is all about. And you can read the research. It's decades of research, but in essence, it's like an apprenticeship. I'm gonna do, and you're gonna kind of stand with me. Then you're gonna, we'll do it together, and then you're gonna do it. And you're gradually releasing responsibility from you, who are, theoretically are the master, right, the teacher, to the learner. Yeah.
So I have a question. I definitely understand, bringing the two together, and I think it's a good idea. One of my questions has to do with the workshop. It's my understanding that many teachers already do Reader's Workshop and Writer's Workshop and have been doing it for years. So what's the difference between what teachers have been doing, and presumably teachers in this school have been doing it, and teachers we hire, we're vetting them out so that they're coming into the school district with this skill base. So what's different between what Gravity Goldberg is able to provide in terms of their Reader's Workshop and their Writer's Workshop, and what the teachers here have already been doing?
Great question. So there's a lot of common language and a lot of common understanding that's necessary in order to have that vertical alignment and that horizontal alignment. And that's one of the areas that we saw a challenge in last year when we would have conversations around the different components of balanced literacy. There was a lot of difference. Some teachers had different definitions on what guided reading is or what shared reading is. There wasn't consistency, and for that reason we knew that we needed to build our foundation together. And by having the consultant team really spend time with us thinking about each component of balanced literacy, what it looks like in a classroom, and then the consultants actually go into the classrooms with the teachers and model. So the students, our real students, are in the classroom with the consultant, and the consultant is showing our teachers, this is what shared reading looks like, this is what a mini lesson looks like. And then the teachers are able to then go back to their classrooms and try it out in their own classroom. So what we're seeing is consistency, and the consistency across the grade level in the rollout of instruction is important because that supports the vertical alignment. So now we have all students that are graduating kindergarten move into first grade with those same foundational skills and the same language, so that they'll go into the next classroom, and when a teacher says turn and talk or eek, kids know what that means. So it really helps by having that same foundation.
So just a follow-up, going back to Eileen's question earlier, maybe just building off of it. So is Gravity Goldberg and or her associates going into every classroom, or is it a turnkey approach?
It is not a turnkey approach. So every single teacher will have coaching in their classrooms.
Okay.
And the key is that individualized instruction, in the same way that we want every child to have the opportunity to be met where they are, to be moved forward, we want our teachers to have that same opportunity. The challenge with professional development very often when it's just a workshop is that it's one size fits all. So we are starting out with the one-size-fits-all in the sense of the learning about. So when we're teaching you about the components of balanced literacy, it's going to be a learning about where everybody receives that information. But then when we move into the demonstration and then more specifically the coaching, we'll be meeting teachers in their zone of proximal development. So we want teachers to be able to grow from where they are, and teachers are at all different places. Some of our teachers that are really comfortable or have had experience with workshop before are more ready to ask different questions than teachers who are it's newer for them.
Okay, so this, just again a follow-up. So this summer, when teachers received PD over the summer, it wasn't all teachers though. It was just some teachers.
So that wasn't professional development
That
over the
wasn't.
summer. That was the curriculum writing.
That was the curriculum writing. Okay.
Right. So we had teams of teachers for each grade level who worked with the consultants,
Okay.
creating the curriculum, because they already knew what
Okay.
they loved and what was important to them, and we didn't want to lose that. That was one of the very clear themes that came out last year, which was we're doing a lot of great things and we don't want to lose the things we're doing. So the teachers were a part of the curriculum writing. They were able to give the feedback to the consultants of what was already in their curriculum, what books they're using, what projects they're doing, what was important to them, that they could lay over any of the curriculum. What's nice about the units, the ELA units of study, is that they are not specific in the sense of it's not that you have to teach China with this unit. So if teachers want to do a nonfiction unit and lay China over it, they can. But in 2 years, if they decide that they want to do a different unit of study, that's perfectly fine because the ELA skills won't change.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Amy, I just wanted to follow up about the turnkey aspect. I'm hearing lots of good feedback on this, that it's filling a void and helping our teachers, but it is extremely expensive, and that was a
Yes.
discussion that we had last year, and I think we also didn't realize when it came to us last year that we were really talking about 5 years. I think that came in at the very end. So what I wanted to ask you about, we live in a tax cap world and we have a lot of needs. So to fully fund this, I think it was $60,000 at $60,000 for each of 5 years is an awful lot of money. Can it be somewhat turnkey? And for those of you who are listening, that means, where we train one person and then that person trains somebody else. Or can we look and say, well, gosh, some of our teachers really do kind of have this. They may not need the same level of training. Or can we look to our teachers and see and group them into strengths that they have in these areas and perhaps teach 2 or 3 of them together? Because, again, we are in a tax cap world, and it's really hard.
Yep. So I think that one of the things that we can certainly look at is how can we look at our plan and be most cost effective, and there might be areas that we can really kind of group teachers. So in the same way we group kids, right? We pull strategy groups for kids. In the same way we could do that for teachers. The challenge that we have is that we have very specific needs in a full rollout, and we just want to be sure that we don't leave a component out because it's sort of leaving out a big part of a program.
Also, I'm sorry, not to cut anyone off,
okay.
but there's a teacher who wanted to jump. I think it's Paula. I can't really. Yep. So Paula Higgins. Paula, you come in, just so we can hear you. Come up to the mic. Come on, I know you wanted that, but just so that we can
We could
hear.
have heard you.
Hi, so I'm Paula Higgins, a third grade teacher. One of the things when you were asking the question about can it be turnkey and also how are people involved, one of the things to add to this is the way it is set up now is every teacher is getting time. That's one of the things, if you talk to teachers over the years when something new is coming in, we never feel we have the time to do the work. And it is very hard, having been a person who has turnkey, to really take all that information because there's the excitement, that's what's going on. There's the creation of materials. So when you're having somebody come in and give that to you, it is not the same thing. And so I have to say that that time we have when we all get together and work and create is invaluable.
Yeah.
And if I may just say one thing, and then I turn it over to you, Don, and then I've had the opportunity to visit with the teachers when you are all engaged in the PD, and I think it is something to be mindful of in terms of your engagement, because to watch 6 or 7 teachers sitting together and having a discussion about what a curriculum plan might look like, or what a lesson might look like, or how we're going to achieve a goal, and then actually go see it in action, and then be able to unpack that together. that's kind of the key to sustainability of this long term, than it just being a pocketed kind of thing. And certainly there are ways to be more cost efficient for sure. But that turnkey thing, it's like kind of going to the gym and watching the guy with the trainer or the woman with the trainer as opposed to being with the trainer. It's different. And so, you can
that
see
doesn't work.
Well, I've been doing it for about 6 months. Not work for me. But
just as a very specific example, so we got together the third grade, and we were talking about conferring, which is a different thing that a lot of teachers need extra work on. And so when Gravity came in, each of the teachers had her come in and work with us in our classroom. So she watched us, and then she stepped in, we did it together, and then we came back and processed that afterwards. And that made such a difference. I'll speak for myself, that the next time I went and was conferring with students, I just was way more comfortable. I had some of the specific pieces I needed. If somebody came to me and said, when you confer, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, it's not the same thing as having that in action.
All right, Donna and then Tim.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I actually feel that spending $60,000 a year, even if we decide to fund this for the next 5 years, to me is not a huge sum of money for something that has this major an impact on something that's such a core part of our curriculum and our curriculum development and working with teachers. And I do feel like I'm always a little bit skeptical when you turnkey something too much, because it becomes like a game of telephone where the instruction gets watered down as you go from the consultants who really are the experts to the person they're training, and so on. And I feel more comfortable with what you're describing, Paula, which is that the consultants who really are the experts are getting to work in each classroom. One of the more powerful presentations that I went to at one of the NYSBA conferences I went to a number of years ago was from someone that was sort of describing the different types of professional development and the relative advantages of just like, having someone come in and talk to the whole faculty for an hour versus having someone come in and, it's sort of work their way up to the sort of from one extreme where you're just kind of as a huge group talked about with something very general for a limited amount of time, to at the other extreme, what you're describing, where you are, there is some general information that's given, but then everyone is actually worked with on one-on-one, and there's feedback and a chance to sort of really incorporate it into the actual practice in your classrooms. And it's so much more powerful, and I mean, not even just in a school setting, but in my own workplace environment, when you're just sort of told something in a very general way, it's very different than, even if someone tells you how to do something on your computer that seems completely simple and they walk away from your desk and you try and do it yourself and you can't do the very first thing because you can't find the boxers, that they had clicked and now they're not there. I mean, I just feel like from what you're describing, it sounds to me like the kind of sort of really visceral, hands-on training that is really going to go a much longer way.
I would give one more thing and then I'll go back to my seat. So, if you look at the history of how this goes, I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
We had teachers college come in, I don't know, it was like 15 or 20 years ago, and it was the same. They came in, we watched them teach our classes like 3 or 4 times, and then it was like, go to it.
Yeah.
And within 2 years, it was gone.
It's gone.
And it was totally, that to me was not a good use of whatever the funds were for that, or of the teacher's time.
And from what I've seen with the way Laddie was rolled out in the middle school, where it is much more of the approach you're taking now, I think the teachers have been able to really absorb it and internalize it much more, because it isn't just being modeled and then someone's walking away. That the teachers are really sort of help implement it in their classrooms in a way that's getting to the point that you're comfortable with what you're doing. So I'm sounds great to me.
Tim, did you want to?
I would just like to share, though I'm not an athlete, but I would like to just share the sports analogy. So the coaching piece is the piece that anytime you shave, it's the coaching piece that gets cut, because teachers have to have the foundation and the understanding of what the different components are. So when the coaching piece gets cut, what ends up happening is they get the big idea, but they don't actually have the time with the consultant to be able to perfect the craft. And that's where, and that's why that coaching piece is recommended, because we really want our teachers to feel supported. And what we've been able to do in our model is when the consultants come, they're generally meeting with 2 to 3 grade levels in a day, but we build in office hours, we call it office hours, where teachers can sign up and have the consultants come into their classroom at a time that they would like. So there's a lot of teacher choice in this. So as Paula had shared with you, teachers are saying, I mean, anything from the beginning of the year, can you come into my classroom and just have a look at my library and like tell me if you think it looks right, if you think that I should change any of the bins, if you have any recommendations for me. To, could you come in and just notice the way that I have kids sitting during reading time? To, can you notice the way my kids are talking in partnerships and give me any feedback? So those are the kinds of things that teachers are asking, and by having a consultant come in, and the consultant is really, you know, the guide by your side, helping you to perfect your craft in a non-judgmental way, it's been very helpful. And the feedback, as you heard from Paula, and the feedback from all the teachers has been very positive. I actually brought with me some feedback. I don't know if it would be helpful for you to hear that.
Can I just,
Sure, Tim.
before we get to the testimonials, can I just ask you a couple questions?
Of course, of course.
A couple things, though, I guess. First, let me just start by saying I echo Donna. I really like everything you've described. It all resonates to me. I think listening to your description, I envision a scenario where teachers are working together to develop curriculum. Teachers are becoming better teachers together. They're doing it over a protracted period of time. Ideally, you're building not just sort of professional camaraderie, but you're sort of creating an intellectual network throughout the school, which raises the level of overall education. So everything about it sounds really positive in that regard. So that also being sort of part on the board and part maybe trying to play the role of devil's advocate a little bit, have you run into any issues thus far, and or do you anticipate, you know, issues going down the road? Like, and as you were talking, something that came to mind to me is you have a number of wonderful teachers throughout the building that you know, one child's had, one child is in the process of having. If I were one of those teachers, and in no way am I anything close to being an educator.
You're close.
No.
You're married to one.
I might bristle at being told that this is the way to confer. How has that gone so far? Have you had to manage that? Like, just.
Thanks. So the feedback has been very positive, actually, from every single teacher. I haven't heard any teacher feeling uncomfortable, and I've also spoken with the consultants to find out if there's been any teachers that are feeling uncomfortable, and their feedback has been also very positive. And it's because of the model. The model is a model really that's set up for success because of the supports that are put into place. Our consultants are completely accessible. Teachers email them with questions. So, you know, one of the biggest challenges that I remember as a teacher in the classroom was hitting a bottleneck. When you are trying something new and you try it and it doesn't work, then you're at this bottleneck. And if you don't have an answer of how to go forward, you kind of give up and go back to what you were doing.
Sure.
But instead, because our consultants are accessible and because our teams are collaborative and they're all working together on the same mission, what's happening is that when they hit that bottleneck, they're able to get an answer and then continue to go forward. Just like we're really encouraging for students to feel comfortable taking risks, in the same way we're encouraging our teachers to feel that same comfort. It's interesting because for observations, we have a lot of observations as administrators that we have to do in the district, and when I ask teachers to let me know what lesson they'd like for me to come in for. And I said it does not have to be Reader's Workshop because I know we're in the process of learning. Almost every teacher has chosen for me to come in for Reader's Workshop. The feedback has been it's the most joyful time of the day. The kids literally are cheering for it. And it's just, it's very special because what's happening is we're creating a readerly life. This is not about just school. This is about life. This is life work. And students are reading because they're finding the joy. And students are reading because they're filling their baggies with books that are just right for them. And students are reading because they see the fact that this is what we do here, and this is what is being modeled, and this is something very special. And I can tell you that I know that we posted a few pictures on Twitter, but the excitement over the ribbon cutting of the classroom libraries was definitely better than the excitement of a World Series.
It's true. I mean, the kids were, no, seriously, they were like, they could not contain themselves, and they were booked. I was like, you know, the books have been there, the whole, you know. It's just a piece of yellow tape over it, but they, you know, it speaks to, I think, what our teachers have done also to create that excitement and that enthusiasm. And I think what's most interesting for me to watch, kind of, you know, from the outside looking in, is, and I could be wrong, but based on what I'm seeing, is there is still so much a level of autonomy that's part of this, because you can choose a book that you're really passionate about. You can choose an approach that you feel is more comfortable, like even conferring. Like, there's no one way to do conferring, right? There's not just one way to track that data. There's no one way to actually sit and engage with a child. There are ways to do that. The overarching thing is that you want to confer with, you want one-on-one time, right? So that's the philosophical anchor to the work. What it looks like could differ slightly, you know, from teacher to teacher, and I think that's most important. And the teachers can correct me if I'm wrong. We have another teacher, Debbie. So Debbie,
Hi,
sorry.
Debbie True. So I just wanted to say the conferring has been so deeply valuable to me and to the students, because it's just informed me so much of what they're thinking and how they're thinking. And as I was just saying to Katie, you know, it is an open door. It's so interesting to ask them what they're thinking, and to hear all the the deep thinking that they have. It's just an incredible thing, and to be in my room. I mean, we were just talking about inviting you guys in to see what it's like for independent reading, for example, and how they actually are so excited, and when we don't get a chance, because there's been so many things going on between student-parent conferences and so on, I have kids who are just genuinely disappointed when they don't get to do independent reading. And for years I've been saying to kids that independent reading, having those moments of eyes on text is like a sacred thing. And they are embracing that now, and they do see it as a sacred thing. And when they don't get to do it, they're really sad. And one of the things that we're doing this year, which is a little bit different, is we've all chosen the same read-alouds. So we've made time. I mean, everybody, well, I shouldn't say that. We've really made a concerted effort to do read-alouds. Sometimes people think that's just something that happens in the primary grades, but now we're really doing it. I mean, I've always done it, but now everyone's doing it in, you know, 4th grade and then 3rd grade. And so we've picked some really magnificent books. And it was just so funny because some of us are not always in the same place because of our schedules. And today I just heard somebody say that somebody was really upset that somebody told them what was happening in the book because we didn't want to know. So it's kind of like spoiler alert, you know. So, but it's just been so nice to have a community that's sharing the same. It's almost like a really giant book club, you know. And so they've really talked about it, and it's been fun to talk to the teachers about the books. And some of them, like a particular book we're reading right now, it's called Kensuke's Kingdom. It's so poignant, and the kids are getting it. I had kids crying in my room because they were so touched by the book. So that's kind of really amazing stuff happening. And in terms of the partnership reads, one of my students had the stomach virus, so he wasn't here today, and we were supposed to start, and I talked to his mom because I was supposed to have a conference with her this afternoon, and she was like, "Oh, did you start it?" Because he's so upset. He was so looking forward to going. He packed his bag, he was ready, and she said, "I don't think you should go to school today because, you just threw up." So he was like, I mean, that's the level of excitement we're talking about.
Debbie, let me ask you, and because I look at you and Paula, and you've taught my children, and you guys are master teachers in my mind. No, it's true. I mean, you gave my kids those excitement, and now, granted, that was pre, government defining all these things that we're doing, so you probably had a lot more freedom. I'm just trying to grasp, because I love hearing everything that I'm hearing, but I remember we had dear books, drop everything and read. So as a master teacher, and I'm going to give you that title, the same with Paula, I understand with younger teachers, maybe they haven't learned this, but you guys, tell me how it's changed what you're doing. I'm not saying this to I just want to understand. You guys are amazing. What is this giving to you that's changing?
So much. First of all, I'm sure as a professional, there's always room to grow. Sure. Always. And I feel like this is my 26th year of teaching. Sometimes it's like brand new. Do you know what I mean? And I have an excitement, and I see it in my kids, which makes it even better. Because, and I really love Gravity and Patty. They are just excellent at what they do. Sometimes you have consultants that come in and you're like, meh. They are amazing. Well, it's true. But they are incredible. They get you excited about doing things. And I have to tell you, the one piece that I did a little years ago when we did kind of Readers and Writers Workshop is the conferring. Yeah. And I'll go back to that again because...
Maybe if you flesh that out, because that's a word I feel like you guys are using it as a term of art, and it's kind of new to the non-educators.
Okay, so for me, conferring is sitting down and calling over a student with the book that they're reading and what's in their book baggie, and saying, tell me about what you're doing here. Tell me about what you're reading. Why did you choose this? What made you, what sort of books do you like? Because I've had kids come to me and say, I need a new book, Mrs. Troop. And they're looking to me as, what can you suggest? You know me as a reader. What do you think? Where do you think I should go from here? Or what do you think I should try? And so it's been so great to have those. Look at conferring as conversations, really deep, really interesting conversations about books, and sitting there and really talking to somebody and saying, so what's going on here? Not just like, oh, what's the plot, or what, it's really like, so why do you think that character did that? Right? And having these really, really more insightful conversations.
Yeah. Sorry, it's my legal terms. So what would Gravity or Patty teach you? Because to me, you're an instinctive, you know Janie, and you're like, oh, well, Janie, you read that. I think you probably like this because you know. So what are you learning through this PD that's helping you do better?
I don't know. I just think it's like different approaches. Sometimes we go to our regular bag of tricks, and we're like, it's what's worked. And then somebody comes in, and they do something, and it's just like, oh, in all these years, I didn't think about doing it that way, and that's actually kind of a cool way. And maybe it doesn't work for all students, but it certainly works for that student or that student.
So she's adding to your bag of tools.
Exactly right. It's exactly right.
And there's two other things that I would add to that that's different. One is that there is much more explicit reading instruction as opposed to reading time. Okay. So I could tell you, Debbie and I have probably been teaching or have been educators for about the same amount of time, and I know when I was a 5th grade teacher and I worked in different contexts, my kids read during the day, but there wasn't necessarily explicit instruction around reading. And I could tell you that I've been in their classrooms, there is explicit instruction around reading. That's one difference. The other thing is, and you brought up, which is great, the DEAR time, the drop everything and read time in the past, at least based on my experiences, was one of two things, depending on what school I worked in. Either we were supposed to read as well so that we could model for kids, or it was more just to manage and make sure everyone was reading while we took care of some administrative thing, right? Our teachers, based on that drop in everything and read thing, is now they're engaged in these very intentional conversations. And what the research shows, which is so important to remember about this work, there are researchers that would argue you can trade out the word reading for thinking. Like the way you read and engage with text is the way that you think, quite often. And not just, I don't mean, like, it could be the directions from an IKEA, bookshelf, which would, be frightening for some people to watch. Me too. But it could also be a piece of literature. How you engage in a text, and how you read is reflective of how you think.
Yeah.
And so you'll hear teachers talk about think mark. I was just in Laura's room right here. She's one of our third grade teachers a week or two ago, and the kids have their think mark. They have this laminated sort of bookmark that encourage, and I know it's not just in Laura's room, but I happen to see it in that room, and it encourages them to track their thoughts. That, you know, right, think about literally what a think mark is, right? You're marking your thinking in different ways, and they could mark a point where they made a connection. They can mark a point where they LOL'd because they laughed out loud. They can mark a point where they something really stood out as important. There's so much intentionality behind this work that's probably the most demonstrative difference. So yeah, Paul is an amazing teacher. Debbie's an amazing teacher, which I've seen firsthand, and I can attest to. Katie's awesome as well. And Jackie and Laura and Christy, everyone here is awesome. You're amazing. That's not the issue. But I do think, right, and so,
Here, Paula.
sorry.
Besides the idea of getting us to know them, we're able to have the kids learn about themselves as readers. And so one of the things Gravity showed us was, what are the next steps? When you see a student doing this and now they're stuck in that place, maybe they're stuck on reading graphic novels because they enjoy humor, and maybe you can start showing them books that have chapters in them that have humor, and then you can go from there. Or maybe they're not finishing books. You know, sometimes you have children, they get started, and then they leave.
Well, some children have parents who don't really surrender.
And so adults who don't finish books.
No, but then how do you let them see this is maybe what they're doing, and how do you maybe make a different book choice? So that's really all of those pieces. Nobody's telling us what to do. They're saying, here's where you are, here's next steps you might want to take to make you a better teacher.
If I could just chime in. There are two things that I think are important just for you to know. When teachers confer with students, a model that is recommended is for a teacher to actually call out what a student is doing. So I noticed that you are. This actually solidifies a reading skill or strategy that students are using, and teachers are always starting that way. When I was a teacher, I used to call it a star. So the star, the compliment, this is what I'm noticing, and then the step or the tip. So I'm noticing that you're doing this. Now I want you to consider this, or let's talk about this. I want you to try this. So what's happening is our teachers are taking anecdotal notes as they are working with our students. So every student is getting individualized instruction, and that piece is such an amazing piece because it meets every child's needs. And I can't reiterate this enough. When you have a child in the classroom, you have children at all different levels, it's very difficult to meet every learner's need in a traditional, this is a one reading lesson and we all do the same reading activity together. But with balanced literacy and with the Reader's Workshop, every child is being met where they are and then given a step to move forward. And I've seen this work with children who are advanced because they're challenged, so they're not bored in the classroom. And it's one of the, I won't go to the feedback from teachers yet, but one of the pieces of feedback is that teachers are seeing fewer behavior issues during Reader's Workshop because the kids are engaged in appropriate text and appropriate thinking work for them.
Now, as Reader's Workshop, every child is working on their own individual book.
Yes, exactly,
So
and it's a
is that
just right book. So
is
it's
that a big movement from whether it's in this building in recent years, or certainly it's a departure from the elementary school that I know where you worked in groups?
Right.
Three or four kids are working at this level, 3 and 4 kids are working at this level.
Right.
Where were we 2-3 years ago compared to now? Were we sort of like this already, but this is just a more refined version of individualized reading? Could you
So
just
there's two different pieces. One piece is that we used to have the New York State modules here. So the New York State modules was much more of a whole class approach. But previously, before that, and I can speak for just generally, what would happen is teachers often would choose a book to work on with the students. And the difference is that this brings in choice. And there's so much research that supports that student choice matters. So, you know, you might choose a book as the teacher that is on my reading level, but it's about snakes. And I actually am petrified of snakes, and I have no interest in them. So the experience of reading that book is not going to be great. Compared to a child, we just ordered for a 3rd grade class all these Minecraft books. And you know what? if Minecraft is what's going to turn a child on to reading,
Yeah.
bring it, right? We're ready for it because we want kids to be reading
Yeah.
and whatever it is that they want to read.
And Tim, there is an aspect of the workshop model that involves small group instruction. You'll hear phrases like guided
Because I
reading.
think there is some value to it. I'm glad you
Yeah,
know that.
and there is, because you also, the one-on-one instruction is really about refining those specific skills. Like, this is what I say you do, and keep doing it, you know, and there's research that supports doing it, like, the thing that you're not doing, like, perfectly, but you're kind of doing it, and you want to positively reinforce that. But then when it comes to exposing kids to a specific strategy or a level of text that might be a little harder, you might do that in a group format.
Yeah.
You know, you might pull, like I said, you might hear a guided reading group, or you might hear a strategy group, and there is something to be said for that. The key, though, being that most of the instruction, very little of the instruction is whole class. Like, very little is everyone sitting and listening to something. There is whole class instruction. There is a mini lesson or whatever, but that's not the dominant. You know, if you're looking at the pie chart, that's probably the smallest part of the pie chart, and that also speaks to the fact that we know our kids have short attention spans because of their age. You know, that's just natural. You know, we're working on brain research, and so how do we engage them long enough to reinforce that point and then move them into their work? So that's a part of it. And this workshop model also, which I think is important to recognize, doesn't just have to be a literacy thing. You can do math like this. You can do social studies like this.
Yeah,
you can do
that's what I was
science like
thinking.
this. Yeah, and again, it's going to look a little different, right? And science has a lot, you know, may have a lot of vocabulary that they won't necessarily know how to navigate. You can build that in. They might be writing a paper for social studies. The way you confer with a kid might be different. You know, all these practices really can float from content area to content area, because it is really about differentiating instruction in the best ways possible. Not always easy, but that's really the goal. So.
And you should know that in year 2, the focus of professional learning will be around guided groups and strategy groups. So this year, the focus is on the reader's workshop, and specifically with the mini lesson, the conferring and the share.
Oh, yeah, the interactive
But next
shared
year, in
reading.
year
Yeah,
2,
okay.
the focus will be around the guided and strategy groups. And guided reading was one of the buzzwords last year that everybody had a different definition for.
Yeah.
So it was really important that we built that foundation together.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you very much for everything. This is very informative, and it's very interesting, and I think it's a really great approach. One of my questions is that even with all of this, and even with all of the excitement and whatnot, and it sounds like it's amazing, and it sounds like there's a lot of excitement, students, teachers, you're still going to have students that are resistant. So how does Gravity or her program bring those students in? Either A, they're resistant because they're not into it, or B, that yes, you're still trying to meet every child at their level, and I understand the Get Right, the Just Right books and all of that, but there's still going to be children who are either struggling readers or who are reading at grade level or beyond, but they're stuck.
Yep. So a lot of it has to do with access. And one of the beautiful things about balanced literacy is that there are many different components. So it's not just the independent reading that we rely on. There are the other components as well. So all students, that's why it's all with all capital letters, all students are able to access literacy through the workshop. And we have components which will be the focus next year. One of the components is the interactive read aloud, which you heard Debbie talk about a little bit because everybody is starting with it. But the interactive read aloud is a grade level or even above grade level text that is used as the model. So teachers are engaging kids, building community around a book. And then this is a book that all kids will have access to and will be able to think about, talk about, and experience together. In addition, we also have the shared read, and the shared read, again, is a text that would be used multiple times for different purposes, but it's a text that would be shared, so it's on the smartboard, so all eyes are on that same text, and we're using that same text to teach multiple things. You know, notice how this author uses dialogue. Notice how this author shows us character traits. Notice how this author uses punctuation to help us, build fluency.
So that would be like a mini lesson that's a whole class.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So there are multiple components to balanced literacy, so it's not just the child reading independently. Our goal, though, through the independent reading is to find what it is that that child is attracted to, and then build on that. So in the same way that I mentioned the Minecraft situation, often what we do is we try to turn children onto series, because if a child likes one series book, then they'll like many in that series, and they kind of know already how the character goes. So what teachers will often do in an interactive read aloud is they'll kind of introduce kids to a series through an interactive read aloud, or the same thing with an author. When I was a classroom teacher, I always started my year with a Lewis Sacker book because he's just so silly, and then after that it was like everybody wanted to read Lewis Sacker. So it's the same idea. Our job is sort of salesperson. We want the children in the classroom to really be turned on by the different authors, the different genres, the different experiences that we present in the classroom.
So that's great, thank you. And just another follow-up question is, so it looks like, for lack of another term, sort of like the scope and sequence of it, first year to second year to third year to fourth year. How do you, how should I put this? So the kids that are coming in first year and kindergarten kids, they're coming in at ground level, right? And they're gonna have these skills and build them all the way up. But you have a fourth grader or a third grader who's sort of being introduced to this type of learning. Not that they haven't learned before, clearly they have been learning. But you know, how do you sort of fill in those gaps?
Yep. So what we're doing is we are relying on the expertise that our teachers have. So our teachers have been teaching well for many years, and now what we're doing is we're enhancing their craft. So what's happening is teachers are still teaching writing, even though we haven't gotten to Writer's Workshop yet. Many of our teachers have multiple tools and strategies that they're using in writing, and then when we get to the writing component, the writing portion of the balanced literacy model, they will tweak, and they will also lay over their units in the same way they did with the reading.
Okay. Thank you.
Amy, just to follow up, we've been talking a little bit about differentiation. I guess through the books that are like the Just Right book is its own level of differentiation. Is there anything else that Gravity or Patty is doing to help with our for our learners with special needs?
Yes. So one of the wonderful things is that the way we have their time set up is opportune for us to set it up with coaching time, or also to use some of the time for our special education teachers. And we've actually had some time specifically set aside for our special education teachers so that they can meet all of our learners for their specific needs. In addition, they can also sign up for the coaching. So our goal is, you know, sometimes we have many of our students that fit the typical instruction, but sometimes there are learners that are just sort of challenges for us, whether they are a student who's a struggling learner, whether they're a student who is run-of-the-mill, or a student who is an advanced learner. And sometimes we just struggle because we don't know where to go next. And that's the beauty of having the consultants be able to come and coach. They actually meet our kids and then give recommendations for next steps to move each learner.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the other piece is that I've really loved to watch is our teachers be together, like even them sharing just ideas. I mean, I happened to sit through a third grade, I think it was third grade, and where they're trying to figure out what book to use for a certain lesson, and they saw which books were like ridiculous. I mean, one book was about the dogs or foxes or whatever it was, like nuts. But they, we didn't use that book. But no, it's a great example, because had you left the all right, I'm going to use the Foxes book, but they sat together and they unpacked the book and they looked at it and they talked about, the language in the book and how would they use it to meet the goals of instruction. So, and what happened was, I use this, suddenly there was a share of ideas. So so as much as, Gravity and Patty are driving the work and framing the work for us, our teachers are also really learning from each other's expertise, because they have this sacred time together, to come and share and reflect specifically on the curriculum, but also more broadly on their work in the area of literacy. So I think that's another piece of it. But I can tell you, when it comes to literacy instruction, I don't, in my 20 years or so experience in different contexts, I don't know of a model that better allows for differentiation than balanced literacy, just as an instructional model, because you're really constantly looking at data, like you're either conferring or you're doing small groups or your mini lessons, so your work is informed by your kids and where they are, as opposed to what the teacher's manual is telling you to do, as opposed to what the next lesson is. And I think when you think of our children with special needs, and whatever that is, you know, our gifted students, our readers who might be below grade level, there's an entry point for every one of them, because the work is driven by them and where they are. And so I think that's also, you know, somewhat different about that than, let's say, a Basel reader or the Engage New York modules or whatever. So that's something to be mindful of as well.
You know, the written response is a very big issue. So when we had Engage New York, there was some book we were working with, and kids would answer questions, you know, kind of restating the question and whatnot. And one of the things that Gravity and Patty are offering us are a lot of ideas for written response, not for writer's notebook, but in their reading, how do you respond to that? And there is such a variety. They gave us this great idea when we start our next unit is going to be biographies, a way of drawing children's biographies. I can't wait to do this. And it was books that we use, but a way of bringing some of these books together and the activities the children are going to do, this whole thing with Jane Goodall. They came up and they gave us these ideas, and then we sat and fleshed them out so that we can use them there. So to me, that whole written response is very different than what we've done.
And it's not teaching to the test, and it's not about getting a score. It's really just about helping our kids refine their thinking as it relates to reading specifically. So.
But I was just going to build on that. I know that, you know, New York State standards, and I know you don't like to talk about it, it's moving more and more towards nonfiction. And as they get in the older grades, one of the things that I think kids struggle with is they're so used to reading fiction that they really don't know how to deconstruct nonfiction. So it's really nice to hear that they're going to be reading, you know, biographies and looking more at text in that fashion. I had just one other, I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions. It's kind of just how I roll. In any event, one of my questions is, I hear that one of the really important pieces is the coaching. So when there was discussion about like the money and, you know, this being a 5-year plan and $60,000 and just being careful about if we are trying to cut a corner, that one of the corners you don't want to cut is coaching. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my question is the following. After 5 years is up, like, I gather that, you know, the staff is going to be sort of trained and have experiences where they can help each other and confer with each other. But is there any sort of study or any, I don't know, anticipation that either Gravity or somebody would have to come back, not at a $60,000 rate, but at a much lesser cost in order to consult at a smaller scale? Is that anticipated, or am I looking into something that's not there?
Well, I would suspect that it probably makes sense to have some kind of maintenance, but it would not be anywhere near what the 5-year rollout would be, because you have to remember the 5-year rollout includes the 3 different pieces. It includes the learning about, the demonstration, and then the coaching. So I think that the maintenance would be more on the coaching level.
Okay.
It's kind of, we have right now an ICT consultant named Jessica who comes in and she works with our teachers, but it really is more of a coaching model. And she's here a few times a year, but it's not the same number of days and it's not the same level, because now all of our teachers will have the same understanding of, okay, this is what shared reading is. Okay, this is what an interactive read aloud looks like. They'll have all of that. We also might want to have the consultants come in, you know, for a couple of days potentially to work with some new teachers, but it wouldn't be the same level of depth, because that piece, all of our teachers have already been trained.
In a similar vein, we worked several years ago with a consultant in math, Peggy Golden, and she's actually coming back for next week, as a matter of fact. And so she'll be there, and we'll have time to kind of break down all the things that we've been doing in math since she has been here several years ago. And we're actually really looking forward to it, because she was really instrumental in helping us with our math program, which we love.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
I'm out.
No, I thank you. I know our teachers have been, it's like 9 o'clock and you have to be here tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
I thank you all for being.
A huge thank you to all our teachers, and your comments were incredibly helpful.
Thank you. Yeah,
Would
so-
it be helpful to share some feedback Or did you hear enough?
I'm good.
I have a sneaking suspicion what I'm going to hear with the feedback.
You know, Amy, if it's in a
From teachers and
document, do you want to
parents, I was
just
just
send
gonna
it
say.
to us?
I sure will.
I think just for the sake of time, that would be great. We appreciate that you gathered it, but that might be helpful.
And Gravity actually gathered it from the teachers. That's
And
just-
in what form, in what format? Was it a Survey Monkey where they
No, they were
required?
talking.
It was just
Okay.
Google Doc. I just asked Gravity to collect
Google Doc.
any feedback for me because I knew that we were coming to
Okay.
the meeting. I've spoken to teachers on my own, but it's different from the administrator to the teacher compared to what she's hearing. So
Okay.
I asked her to gather any feedback for me, and that was the feedback that I had. But I can share that with you.
Okay,
That's no
thank
worries.
you.
I would pose you this question, and I sort of like semi-reluctant to ask it, and I don't think you really even particularly need to answer now, but I want you to think about it and just sort of ponder, maybe get back to Tony or get back to the board broadly, but how do you see this impacting children's, overall children that will go through your building, impacting their attainment? And how? Like in what way? So if you yourself are saying, I would expect to see this measurable difference in these kids 4 years out, when these 4th graders or 8th graders, what would that measurable difference be? And I really, I sort of leave you with that thought. I don't want you to feel like, oh, I got to sort of wax poetic now and opine, but just to think about it.
Well,
Yes.
And I think actually, Tim, that question really would be a great starting point for when you come back, because we are going to come back in I don't remember what date we said, March or something like that. And that is the kind of thing I'm hoping you could hear. Like, what are you seeing? Like, what's the concrete?
Because I love it. I love everything about it. But it is about, ultimately, we do changes. We pedagogy changes for results.
Right.
Right. And so, what results do you anticipate? Exactly. Thanks. Yeah.
I have one other question, because we're talking about horizontal and vertical alignment, and the first place we always worry about that is within each of our buildings, but there's always, the edges, so like 4th to 5th grade. So have you had any conversations, and I realize this is the first year of this, but any conversations yet with Gail, or so that there's some understanding between the 4th grade and the 5th grade teachers? Because obviously if they're in 5th grade, even though it's in the middle school, they're still in self-contained classes, and I would assume that whatever the common language is that the kids are getting here, that you'd want there not to be sort of a disjoint between that and what goes on in 5th grade.
Absolutely. So we have had conversations about it, and I think after we spend some time together this year, then that'll be a conversation as far as whether the middle school is interested in looking at continuing, the model in 5th grade or 6th grade as they go forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So you all know John is here and still standing. He ran the New York City Marathon yesterday. So
Wow, congratulations.
Can I tell you one thing that is a testimonial that is you're not expecting, but literally I heard it last night, so you should just. I was at an event last night with parents who have kids in the schools. I won't give too much information, but the father asked me, he said, we were talking about Hastings 10706 Facebook page. He goes, "Do you think it'd be how do you think it'd be received if I post on there that my 2nd grader wakes up at 5 a.m. to read books? Is that a problem?" I go, "You'll get voted off."
they're kicking you out.
That is the
it's a
impact
huge-
that we
it's-
hope to have.
That is it's a great testimonial.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, John. Thank you to our teachers.
Rest those feet. Say, go rest those feet.
Yeah, go rest those feet. You better be here tomorrow morning by 7.
And by the way, I will add, Mia Johnson, the co-president of SEPTA, ran as well.
Did you really?
Oh, wait, yes. Wait, who was
Yeah, she did.
I don't think she's here
She
today.
did. She's not here.
Wait, who's it?
Mia.
Oh,
Mia.
yes. Oh, I saw her. She posted something about her feet already.
Yeah. She
Nice.
decided to take up marathoning in the past
Yeah.
years. I know.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Amy.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
Lisa, I'd just like to say that I love this format. I mean, this is my 10th year on the board, and I found that this conversation was so much kind of meatier and more valuable than, you know, than some of the dog and pony shows which I think are stressful for the administrators to prepare and are not really as informative as what we just went through. And so I'm thrilled that we did this. So thank you.
Well, thank you for asking for
thank
that.
you. I think, and I will share that this weekend, the Board of Ed presidents from the river towns met, and we were talking about different formats. And I'm actually waiting to get a video from Dobbs because they do one business meeting and one work session a week, and their work sessions aren't. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. No, that would be really, really hard. We don't want to do that. I'm sorry.
Tim got really excited, actually.
It's been a long day on my end. Just forgive me. Dealing with insurance companies all day.
Just trying to give us a little heart attack.
Exactly. No, then I'd have to talk to the insurance companies again. But anyway, they do one of their meetings every month as a work session, and they actually do televise it, which sort of got us thinking. And it's very much, you know, back and forth with teachers and community members, and they said it's really great. So I looked online, and the link wasn't obvious, so I'm going to get the link and I'll shoot it around. So it's nice for us to consider different models. But yeah, this was really, really helpful.
Yeah, it was good.
So, okay, so just moving along to finish up this portion of our meeting, finish the work session. Is there any new business that anybody has to raise?
I think I just wanted to bring up, I guess I still need clarification, and maybe this is something we could discuss at our next retreat. I feel like I still need clarification on how to go about communicating. One of the things I did put out there is the possibility of maybe having some sort of protocol, handbook, or some sort of guide, because I just don't think it's intuitive. And I feel like since I've been on the board, I've had different conversations with different people, and I think everybody has a different take. And it may have worked in the past because maybe everybody was on the same page or came from sort of the same place. I'm just personally not really sure how to approach and sort of address questions that I have and the format in which it's done.
And we talked about this. Lisa and I had a conversation about this.
And I share your concerns.
Yeah, no, and I think the need for clarity is you know, totally makes sense. And so it just was a timing issue around this meeting.
Absolutely.
You know, but I definitely think it's something that we can carve out time as part of our next meeting on November 27th, whether we block out time for a retreat with ourselves and or not. I will say, though, as part of my conversations with Robert, before we got started with Robert, he did talk about that being, you know, developing a protocol being something that he would recommend for, you know, a new board with a new superintendent, but down the road as we kind of establish norms. So, you know, I didn't push that from him, just so you know. So he did kind of put it out there, and that was in, you know, June or July, sorry. But then it was like, let's get to know each other, and, you know, for you all to get to know each other, us, sorry. And that's kind of where that came from. And you know, Robert does have availability too. But this, in terms of clarifying certain aspects, we can certainly do at a conversation together at part of a board meeting coming up.
And it's probably part of a much larger sort of conversation. But I mean, I know Dobbs Ferry in the last 2 years, they've sort of come up with their own sort of handbook and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's posted online, and I know some of the other river towns are also working on it. And I just think that, moving forward, like whether it's whoever's on the board, you know, I mean, I'm not going to be here indefinitely.
That's important.
Nobody is, the teachers will be here longer than we will.
Yeah, and our kids will be here longer. And no, and I do think that your point to some sort of handbook, whatever that looks like for different purposes, and there are a lot of districts that, I mean, if you Google that, you'll see a lot of districts have a variation of the same kind of thing. It's not like you're not reinventing the wheel, but I do think that's an appropriate thing for us to work on, and would help for us to do it as a collective, so we can sort of hammer out certain things that would work well to facilitate communication.
It's a Herculean task. I'm not suggesting that
but once
we
it's
do
done,
it immediately but
once it's done
at lightning speed.
No,
I think that makes a really good board goal.
Yeah.
As a task, because board members are going to have to put the time into doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you just have to make the choice. If that's an important thing to do, then that is, that could be a really effective board goal.
That's kind of a project for a board ops committee.
Yeah. well, whatever you want to call it, but yes, that's the kind of thing. You're going to have some people dedicate time to it. So.
Understood.
What you come up with.
Hey.
Well, I was going to say the same thing because.
Summers are good for me.
Yeah, but that's. It's like,
Me too. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Eileen.
But
no, I was
so
just saying, no, because I was thinking the same thing. That was going to be a suggestion I had. Was that I think we should, as a goal, make a you know, a sort of a new board member's handbook kind of thing that goes out, so that people get a better idea.
I feel like years ago there was one. I don't know what.
Mine.
I remember. I'm gonna have to go through my old.
I just shut up. I just literally shut up.
I mean, I could also.
Yeah, I did too. But then I
It's like,
remember
I don't-
seeing something. That
I can
was
ask
like,
Pete
oh.
if
There
there's
were some
anything
old
that
worksheets we had, but they were really old.
So thank you, Christine, for bringing that up. But yeah.
Okay, next is our second public comment, but since we have no public, we have no second public comment. Are there any Board of Education comments? Okay, so with that, I think we're going to look to move into an executive session, and I'd be looking for a motion to move into executive session to discuss the legal framework for filling a position to head the curriculum department as it relates to bargaining unit implications. Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so with that, we're going to move into executive session. We're going to say goodbye.